Hi, it's Stu, and this is a video about the books that I've read or plan to read for Arab American Heritage Month, which is the month of April. It is the last week of April, and I'm late to the game on some of these books and on this video, but I've been reading Women's Prize for Fiction long lists, International Booker, and some things that have just kind of got sort of like backlisted off of my March reading. And so, reading is always TBRs and reading and piles of possibilities. There's just always about, keeping yourself excited to read. And I'm always excited to read diversely. And I want to try to make sure that there is representation across all of the identity groups, the ways in which to see and experience this world, and the way in which the world and sees and experiences humans. So I especially like to pay respect to the heritage months. They exist for a reason, and often those reasons lie with the sort of lack of representation, the systematic sort of disenfranchisement from spaces such as, books being published. And so where I try to make sure that diversity is throughout every month and or reading challenge. I also like to take the time to think carefully during the heritage months and make sure that I just go through my shelves, and it's just kind of like even an inventory of like how much of this kind of representation do I even have on my shelves. So these books are Arab American, Arab Canadian, and Arab British, particularly English. And it's either author or character or sort of issues therein. So let me just go through the ones that I've already read. If in a previous reading review video, I did talk about What Strange Paradise by Omar El Akkad. This is about migrants leaving war-torn areas, and the protagonist, the young boy in this particular story, was fleeing Syria and sort of the only survivor off of a boat, making it to a Greek island. And another book that I read and already have talked about is Evil Eye by Etaf Rum. This is a Palestinian American story. It's a domestic story where we see inside of a marriage that's not working, and we see the inner workings of a woman who internalizes everything and really does believe that it's her fault. Some of the reasons that it's kind of the marriage is not functioning, and then comes, to it, and then thinks that like there's maybe some kind of curse upon her, which is the relationship between what the evil eye means. But then comes to learn that in fact it becomes illuminated that in fact she's being lied to and gaslit by her husband. And I thought that this was a fantastic exploration of domestic life, of looking at, the sort of what the role models of our parents and their marriage, and how that impacts how we see ourselves and how we should behave inside of marriages. And I talked about that already, so that's why I can say more, I guess, about Etaf Rum. I'd quite like to find A Woman Is No Man now that I finished Evil Eye. Just recently, I finished The River Has Roots by Amal El Mohtar. Mohtar, yeah. And this is a Canadian author, Lebanese Canadian author, I believe. And I have read the book that this author wrote with Max Gladstone, I believe, which is called How to Lose the Time War. This book I liked more, and it was resemblant of that. It's kind of like the retelling of a fairy tale. There's quite a bit of fancy and a fantasy. It's sort of like a fantasy world, but it reads sort of like a fairy tale. And yeah, and I'll talk about it more in a future review video because it's just recently finished. It was a buddy read. So I will talk about it, I think, with the buddy who I read it with first. I'll have more ideas for an upcoming review video. I'm currently in the middle of and listening to, and it's quite a good listen, Crescent by Diana Abu Jaber. This setting is West LA. Yeah. And I think going back maybe to the 90s, I think this is a bit of an older book, or at least the setting is. And we're introduced to a character who is who's living with an uncle whose father was Arab American, whose mother wasn't. Was like white Christian American from what I'm gathering, and she runs a little cafe, and there's a bit of a romance in this, and to be honest, I'm liking the romance, and I normally don't like romance, as you know, I often say, oh, this is a romance piece I just didn't need. Anyway, Diana Abu Jaber, I believe, works in Portland, Oregon. She teaches creative writing, and she is from New York. I think her parents were Jordanian and Palestinian, and these themes are definitely very much Arab American. I'm also in the middle of reading outside in a bright, sunny day. In fact, I got too hot and decided to come inside and make this video. It's nice and cool in my basement apartment. That's one great thing about living in a basement apartment. And that's These Impossible Things by Salma El-Wardani. Salma El-Wardani. Salma El-Wardani is a English Egyptian journalist, I believe, who wrote this work of fiction where we have three characters. One's Jordanian English, one's Pakistani English, and one's Egyptian. And they're friends. They're in university, so this is sort of like new adult almost. And they're, going through love and friendship and trying to understand, what it's like to be a new adult in England and be part of a culture and be pious or not pious through religion. And I think this is very contemporary, and I just think that folks who want to just sort of read representation of different ways that people can be, that remember that no identity is a monolith. Like, there are lots of different ways to be any part of your identity. And I think this book is really handling that very well. And it's a very commercial book. I mean, it's a read with Jenna, and I think it was written to reach wide audiences, which doesn't always work for me, but this one so far is. I'm trucking through it. It's a very propulsive book. I have behind you Is the Sea by Susan Moaddii Daraj. This is Palestinian American novel, and I know that the setting or the characters are, this is definitely a Palestinian American book. Next we have Feybound by Sara El Arifi. This is fantasy. I found this in a little free library, and I've had it for much longer than I would have ever kept a fantasy from a little free library. I try to, keep them rolling if I'm not going to read them. But for some reason, I just kept holding on to this. Yeah, it's a trilogy, so who knows if it'll pull me in. But it is book one, I believe, and so I'm excited for that. Sara El Arifi is English, and I believe she's Emirates. Yeah, I believe her heritage is from the UAE. And then finally, and kind of crossing over, because May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I have The Royal Abduls. It's written by Ramzia Shamoun Koya, and Ramzia Shamoun Koya, I believe, was born in the U.S., but her parents are Fijian. And this book, I hope to get to, I'm choosing this book like in this set of books for Arab American Heritage Month, because this is a very like post September 11th and what it's like to be Muslim or to be mistaken or identified as Muslim. Like what was going on during that time with like Sikhs and other folks who were not Muslims, but where turbans were being, harassed and even murdered because of a really huge anti-Muslim and anti-Arab sentiment that happened in the US. All fueled by just this lack of understanding diversity. Another great reason to read if you don't, another great reason to really engage in Arab American Heritage Month. For folks who are familiar and want to see themselves, and for folks who aren't familiar with this, huge tapestry of Arab and Muslim cultures that are represented in England, Canada, and the UK in these books. So that's it. You can see some I've finished, some I'm in the middle of, and some I have high hopes for. I'm pretty committed to these books. I don't think there'll be any just read or unhaul. I'm pretty sure I'll at least, there's only 3 that I haven't started. So quite possibly I could even get it done in the next week if I can finish a couple of ones that I'm in for Women's Prize, but we'll see. Anyway, that's it. That's my TBR. I'm going to go back out and read in the sun until I can't take it anymore, because I love sunshine and vitamin D, and I love reading in the sun. So until next time.